Hello and welcome to another edition of the Tigers Down Under. I'm your host Alex, and with me I have Dan. How are you, Dan?
Yeah, look, pretty good. I've recovered from my technical difficulties last week. We've got another impressive win. Flying high, sitting comfortably in fourth spot at the moment, eyeing off the top two. Even Big Surge said, dream of second place.
He's given us permission, that's for sure. Yeah, I was going to say peek behind the curtains that you were meant to be on the podcast last week, but we had a few technical difficulties. So in that sense, maybe obviously we'll focus on the Swansea game, but I'll get your thoughts on the 9-point week that we've had and how I was listening to the boys at to Hull and back this morning while I was out for a walk, and I think that the way they framed it was a really it really resonated in the sense that we kind of went from going into that Southampton game with a bunch of injuries, sort of unsure how we were looking for the remainder of the season, whether we're going to start to drop off, that sort of thing, to kind of coming at the other side of it, especially after the Swansea game as well, thinking there's just this belief and this as you just said, this desire to look almost up the table and eye off that top two. And it's the transformation of 7 days going from uncertainty around even making the top six, it's been like, no, we're in this, we belong here, and we can actually do something a bit better. Perfectly timed. Sorry for that.
No, that's all right. Look, it was. I think on a personal note, I probably didn't expect to come out of this busy week with 9 points, and I guess the manner in which we went about it as well. I think just really, really impressive, kind of all round. I think obviously, as you say, the Southampton game was one that we seemed like we were just sort of scraping the bottom of the barrel in terms of getting a bare 11 out there and not really having much of a bench. But someone like Akintola, who has been really inconsistent or lacked sort of end product or whatever for us through his cameos throughout the season, sort of stepped up with the big moment in that game before I then think succumbing into an injury and getting subbed off immediately after half time. But I think that's kind of as much as you go, that's what you need, in your squad. You need those guys to be able to get up and take their chances when they get them or whatever, or be ready to make an impact. I think more and more, I'm leaning away from some of these moments just being flukes, and it's being like, these guys are obviously really well managed by Jakubowicz, in the sense that they're all really buying into the vision, and I think he obviously must be very clear in what he wants from them and what he's expecting, and that they want to deliver that. So when they're getting their opportunities, they are really trying to do what they can for Jakubowicz, for the club, for the squad as a whole. So I think Southampton really showed that sort of grit and desire, and even someone like Crooks, who was supposed to be injured and out, and he appears and he plays and one of the best on the park. I thought he had a great game, and then we get through that. Reinforcements start to arrive, on the eve of games. I think then you go to Preston, and Hirakawa comes off the bench, has had maybe one training session with the squad. He's almost first touched the ball, he sets up the third goal of the game. Just sensational. And I think it's one of those things I think we've talked about previously, that it's not always just about getting in players with pedigree. It's not always just about getting in the guy who's scored a bunch of goals or whatever. It's about getting in the right characters, the right people that are going to fit into what you're trying to build. And so where we've seen in the past, the flashy or so-called flashy players, the Milinkovic's or whatever who have arrived, with some level of hype or whatever from abroad, but never really lived up to it. And to be fair to Hirakawa, he's a Japanese international. He's certainly not he's not underrated or a slouch of a player. Like he's been in and amongst Bristol's squad all season pretty much. Surprising that they
it doesn't make any sense to me.
Come to us, but I think I saw they signed Sam Morsey back to the championship.
Right.
But anyway, that's just a side note. But he just he's just slotted straight in. I think they all love him already. I think even I think McBurney might have put something out of, or no, it was Lundstrom maybe. I think said put out a thing about how good the bunch of lads were and how good it was to be back with his mate Kieran Dow, and then also tagged Hirakawa on the end. And so they must there's something going on right behind the scenes at City at the moment, and it's turning into these sorts of sets of results and these sorts of performances where I think we've seen over a period of time the defense improving, and that shift away from free flowing, conceding and attack and scoring goals to sort of free flowing scoring for the most part, and a lot tighter at the back. And was it just the one goal conceded this week?
Two. One against Southampton, one against Swansea.
Yeah. So was it? It's like 7 or something, 4 and 2 against. It's they're not bad numbers, and all of a sudden the goal difference is comfortably in the positives. It's +8 or something now, I think, which is a nice healthy little number. A really sensational week. I think the arrival of Hirakawa, I think he's been great. I think just in the 2 appearances I've seen so far, I think he's going to arrive and do exactly what you want out of a January signing. He's arrived, he's hit the ground running, he looks dangerous on the ball, he fits into the system already. He actually looks like he's been here all season or longer.
And he's got the right style. I look at him against, say, an Ndala or someone as the other option off the bench, and you go, Hirakawa was always described as very pacey and direct, and you think a pacey, direct winger is exactly what Jurkovic seems to want from his players. He wants players who take the ball and instantly sort of push forward with it and try and put the opposition on the back foot. Whereas someone like an Ndala, I think, takes a lot more time on the ball. He's a bit more of like a Philogene style winger, which is not a criticism per se, because obviously Philogene's a great player, but it's just a very different style of winger. Where I think the Hirakawa style is much more what Jurkovic is after, and so from that perspective, I'm actually not surprised necessarily that Hirakawa has just sort of slotted in so well.
Yeah, I think we saw particularly on the weekend how effective I think that Hirakawa can be, especially when you've got Miller on one side and sort of before, as you sort of say, you take him off and you were losing some of that directness on that side. We were having to either maybe shift Kyle Joseph out to the left or something. It's not really his spot, or put Ndala or Akintola or someone there. Whereas now you take Miller off and the right back goes, okay, cool, bit of a reprieve, and then they're up against Hirakawa, who's going to do exactly the same thing. And you saw, I think they subbed the right back on the weekend just because we're getting torn apart, and it just got torn. It didn't matter. We once Miller went off and Hirakawa came up, it was the same. We just attacked. We got in behind. We got around. It was just, it was really, really impressive, and I really liked that. How that is building. It was nice to see Kieran Dow come off the bench as well, but I'm sort of jumping ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say,
do anything.
We're sort of sliding into talking about the Swansea game, so we may as well talk about it properly. And look, it was the sort of we've had 2 games away from home. Granted, the Preston game was on a pretty poor pitch as well, so we can't really say that was any better than the MKM. But top of the away form, I think, in the league or in the country, dare I say. But then sort of middling table for home form. So you sort of think, it's one of those discounted tickets offers at the home ground. It's, coming back home after 2 wins on the bounce away from home. It was all sort of set up for a bit of a deflating performance. But Maybe a little bit of fortune with the penalty, and in terms of just, I guess, fortune in the sense that it was such a blatant penalty that you're like, it was so unusual that it was such like a clear-cut handball, and you kind of just, okay, we take that. And then obviously the absolute banger from Regan Slater puts us 2-0 up. But I think the second half performance in a way almost diminishes from the fact that we actually had a really fantastic first half and created a lot of opportunities. Miller down the left in particular was creating a lot, had their fullback on toast, really. Like, as soon as you've got those sorts of plays where I think Miller just sort of chips it past him and beats him for pace to the ball, you go, he's got him all day from that perspective. And then, kind of just sat back on it in the second half. Maybe a little bit of fatigue for the third game in the week. A little bit, obviously, of Swansea just coming back into it. And I mean, in fairness, I was watching a replay the Sunday morning and got to the point, I think it was about 80 minutes, where I was just too stressed out, just thinking, they're going to score an equaliser here. And so I actually checked the score because I was like, I just need to know. I need to put myself out of the misery and check the score. And so when I saw that we won, I could enjoy the last 10 minutes a little bit more. But sort of as I started the episode by saying, it was the sort of performance where you go, geez, what a difference a week makes, where suddenly we're knocking off Swansea and going, it's just continuing to pick up that momentum and that belief in the squad. And I think the players are really starting to buy into it too. And it's an incredible feeling amongst the squad and with the team and the city and everything now.
Yeah, I think there's a time this season where, we'll pick up wins and then we go, but we've got this team and they're in form, that they're a bit worrying. But it's coming into a point where we actually don't really have to fear anyone. And even to the point you go, well, like, we've played Middlesbrough twice, so we don't really the second game against Ipswich, I think, will be really interesting. Obviously, the second game against Coventry. But
that's like that. You kind of go, that's it. Like, sort of two really tricky games to finish the season, and that's it.
And I think Jukiewicz has shown, like, when even you look at the Borough pair, the pair of Borough fixtures, that he learns and he's willing to adapt, and he understands what change, he understands the game and what changes need to be made. So I think when that Ipswich game rolls around, that I know that was a game where we actually were very resolute for a long period and then just copped 3 goals late in the second half. But
from memory, we were pretty undermanned in that game, weren't we? Had quite a few injuries at that point.
I can't remember. Probably.
Yeah. I mean, good chances are that we did, yeah.
But I just think, he's shown that sort of across that I think I think I can see that being a very different result, that we take at least a point off them, I think. But yeah, I think look, it was a really interesting game. The first half was sensational, as you say. I think we played some really great stuff. We scored, as the handball. I don't know what Kabanga, what he was doing.
That's the second one of those we've had, isn't it? Because it was the West Brom game as well. We got a really blatant handball penalty as well.
I've just never really seen anyone defend a free kick like that, to just jump with your arm well above your head and then he goes, well, what was I thinking? And yeah, I don't what? It was so strange. But as you say, you take the bits of luck. I think over the course of our City careers, we've been on the wrong end of a fair few decisions and a fair bit of bad luck. So we just take those as they come. Well put away by McBurney, which is what you need. You need someone who's confident to step up and slot him, and he sends the keeper the wrong way and tucks it, perfectly into the corner. So
I was a bit worried because I think his last 2 penalties, he's done the little just straight down the middle, really kind of relaxed penalty, and I thought, don't try it for a third time because I reckon the keeper's going to be onto it. So I was glad when he put it in the corner, and it was a really well taken finish.
Yeah, he was. I kind of, I don't know. I was really nervous about the penalty because I think it was him and Joffy were talking, and I was like, oh, who's going to take it? Because I was like, they're both really clinical, and I was like, Joffy's ahead, so do you give him the free goal to try and get him closer to the golden boot, or do you give it to Ollie to get him to double figures in the league? But I guess I just keep It's crazy to think that, like, was it 27 goals between McBurney, Joffy, and Joseph? That's crazy to me. Crazy to me. Anywho, good penalty.
Well, we've already surpassed last season's goal tally in 27 games or whatever it is.
It doesn't surprise me. The strike force this season seems. I think that I guess the thing is like the manager, the style of play is a little bit more refined. We have the sort of right players, available. We have, admittedly, Balloomy's out again, but we got Balloomy and Millar back, and they have helped. I guess in that shift to making sure that we are direct and going forward and things, whereas last year was. I mean, there was a lot of promise at a lot of different times last year is probably how I'll describe the football, but not a lot ever really sort of eventuated too much on the pitch in terms of, enjoyable, exciting attacking football. But certainly there this season. I think probably the big thing was Zapotnik's two misses.
I was gonna mention them.
They had me really, really worried with, and like two great balls in from Josh Tymon. I know they both of them sort of went through legs and a bit of traffic and stuff to get to Zapotnik. But as soon as that ball, I think the first one especially, rolled through, got to him, and I saw him like coming in the back post, I went, oh, God damn it, here we go. And then he's just poked it wide. He'd sort of just overstepped, and it was just behind him a little bit, and he's just put it wide with his back foot. That was as much a cause of celebration for any of the other goals that we have scored.
I don't know if you've seen too much on social media the past week with this podcast that was talking about our chances in the playoffs, and one of the co-hosts saying, we're really consistent, like you were saying at the start, like we're really consistent. We're picking up a lot of points. We're just sort of churning them out. And the other guy sort of rattling off all these XG stats and saying, well, they're giving up all these big chances. They're getting really lucky, but it's not sustainable. And the City supporter base has really sort of had a bit of an outrage at them over that podcast and the concept that we're getting a bit lucky. And I found it really ironic from that perspective that we had, I would say, a fair slice of luck against Swansea with those two big chances missed by Zapotnik. And I think there's both sides of it where I think it's okay to acknowledge that we have been lucky in some games. I think there's probably the Norwich game, the West Brom game, and this one where I think opposition strikers have missed big chances. And I think it's also okay to say that you don't get lucky 27 times in a season, like you were saying at the start. Like the side has clearly developed a style of play under Jakirovic, which is sustainable so far anyway, where we are scoring a lot of goals. We're being quite clinical. So I think there's a bit from both sides there where I go, you can disregard the XG overperformance to an extent because you go, that's clearly a sustainable brand from us, while not completely saying that we haven't, we've been lucky in a couple of games. I think it's okay to say that.
Yeah, I think like another day, I mean, he scored 13 goals this season. So another day he buries one, if not both of those. And which is pretty much what his manager said. He said, I'm not worried about it. He's probably harder on himself than anybody else at the moment because he's scored, 13 goals. He scored a bunch like that already. Like he knows he should have put it away, but he did, whatever. Like we move on. So I think those two big chances were probably the I don't know how to describe it. So they're not really the turning point, but they're one of those, I guess, like without those like misses, I think like you sort of have the potential to become maybe complacent within the game, where if you sort of if they're not creating anything and you're sort of sitting there and you've got your 1-0 and you don't quite sort of, but with them getting so close, it sort of pushes you to go, okay, well, we got to make sure that we put this one away. So, I mean, and Regan Slater's goal, what do you say about it? Scrambling the box, it pops out to him, just gets it out from under his feet, and then just leathers it, and it just swirls through the air away from the keeper. On first glance, I thought it was like absolutely top bins. I saw the replay, and I was like, oh, it wasn't even that. It wasn't even that top bin. It was like middle of the goal, but like, wide enough that the keeper couldn't get it. But like still, it's, great hit. In case Burnsy's listening, first goal from outside the box.
That's right.
So we've got one. We've got one this season. I can stop hearing about it. And stop hearing that stat that we haven't scored any goals from outside the box. And it's so ironic that it was on beIN's, like that it was on like Sky and beIN, so it wasn't Burnsy commentating.
Yeah. Because no, it's the same as you. I saw it and I thought, it's curled into the top corner, and you see the rep. I'm like, it takes a little bit away from it because it's sort of middle of the goal, but out of the keeper's reach. But no, I think what I love most about that goal is because you always get that sort of the ball falls to a player on the edge of the box and the crowd just shouts shoot, and then the player doesn't often shoot. Sometimes they do, but it hits like a wall of players or whatever. So for this one to actually sail into the goal, it's just like that perfect goal. So that was awesome.
Yeah, and I think he has had another one of those seasons for us where he's been working really, really hard and doing so much off the ball and with the ball as well, but hasn't really maybe contributed in those key statistics as much as we would like and probably he would like. But I think it was a really good reward for, I think, like his work, especially, and in this game as well. I think like there's that goal. There's another one where he turns the ball over on the left-hand side and then chases down the winger and puts in a really good sliding tackle to I think he even wins the throwback. Like does just some outstanding work, and it's those sorts of moments which I think really epitomise that team culture that Jurkovic has built, where we do fight, we do recover from our mistakes, we have to give everything all the time, otherwise we'll get torn apart. But
and there was a moment in the second half where I think he was dribbling with the ball, maybe he lost the ball, but then he tackles the opposition, he gets the ball back, there's like a 3 or 4 sort of touch play with him where he sort of battles through like 2 or 3 players. It sort of reminded me of was it Alex Bruce against Suarez or something? There was one passage of play where Alex Bruce throws himself into like 3 repeat slide tackles or something, and I was like, it's very reminiscent of that for me. But it's just that like never say die, just keep putting your body on the line and keep fighting on.
Yeah, look, so first half was awesome, and then I think it might be like there's a couple of things in terms of the second half. Obviously, I think Swansea, they got a good halftime talk. They got spoken to this. Let's just adjust this, X, Y, and Z. This is where we need to improve. It's pretty easy when you go look at the 2 chances we already created. Like we can score goals here. We just got to keep doing what we're doing. So they came out, I think, just with a adjusted game plan, which seemed to work for them a little bit clearer and a little bit cleaner in the second half. But I also think there was a part of this where we had played 3 games in a week, very mindful of not overextending, not risking any injuries, some of those sorts of things. And so I think it's why I think after about 75 minutes we then shift to a back 5. Like we see some of those things, we start to just sort of lock it up, be a bit more conservative, and just sort of conserve everyone's physicality, so that because I think we've had enough injuries this season so far. But it's one of those things, not the prettiest second half, but overall a reasonably well managed sort of game. And we still had like a number of other chances to score. I think Miller has a decent shot that's saved. Joseph gets 1-on-1, I think.
There was the Hirakawa one.
It's Hirakawa where he runs 40 yards and then takes a shot from the edge of the box, which was good as well. So there's still, apart from the goals, there's still another 4, 5, 6 really good chances to score. I think of the stats at the end were like, we had 12 shots and there was like 8 on target or something, and Swansea had about the same, but it was like 2 on target or something. Like, just, I don't know. You take the 3 points and you walk away going, we got ahead, we managed the game. We also didn't have to hear Burnsy talking about how 2-0 is a dangerous scoreline. I can only imagine what he would have been saying when Swansea scored 1.
Once it was 2-1, yeah. No, absolutely. Well, I'll get your votes from this one, and we can talk Blackburn and Watford.
Yes, I have them. I've been thinking about this so much. What did I do up here? Brain, come on. 3 points was Miller, because I thought he, as you sort of alluded to before, absolutely terrorized down that the left hand side. I know he wasn't perfect. Though sometimes he turned over a bit cheaply, but I think generally his involvements were, for the most part, really promising and really positive. So 3 points to Miller. 2 points went to. I'm going to go Slater. I don't remember if this is who I had, but I'm going to go Slater because some of the stuff we were just talking about anyway. Great goal. A lot of that really gritty determination to win and retrieve and retain the ball. And I'll go 1 to Egan, who I actually thought had a really good game as well. Some really solid blocks. Late in the game, carrying the ball forward, getting involved, almost sort of scored a late goal after running basically the length of the field.
Nice. I had Slater for the 3. I guess similar reasoning to you. Good goal taken, all energy display in midfield. And then I had Miller for the 2. So we basically just traded 3s and 2s there for similar reasons. And then I just went 1 for Hirakawa. Great energy on the wing when he came on. As you said, like that 40-yard run and shot was really exciting. I think he slotted in really seamlessly and looks like a great addition, a really smart addition to the side. I still don't know what Bristol City were thinking loaning him out, but their loss is our gain, so very happy with that one. So, yeah, gave him the 1 vote. Well, then on the topic of transfers, so not a whole lot of movement. I mean, we do have a comment here from John, a question here from John saying, do we think we're finished for the transfer window? So we've got McNair and Collier presumably signing this week. I mean, Collier's been meaning to sign for the last 2 weeks just about. I think partly with Collier, it was probably the fact that he was recovering from an injury. It sounds like he put off the medical till he was fully recovered, which he is now. I think probably also partly because, even putting aside all of our transfer restrictions and all of that, we do have the literal restriction of having 25 men in a squad. And I think we had 1 free slot, which was Hirakawa. Palmer's now left, and that's Dow. And now we're signing McNair and Collier. So I can only presume Williams will drop out, regardless of if he's sold or whatever. And then I don't even know who else is in the 25-man squad that we could drop out. Maybe like a Furlong. I don't know if he's part of that squad. I don't know if he's too young or whatever. But that could be part of the hold-up in terms of just the practicalities.
I suppose it's probably. Well, I think I put in the pod that I read something about they were talking about whether they were going to deregister some of those injured players out of that 25-man squad. So whether they're still like they're getting their final assessments from the medical team about whether they're the extent of the injuries or how long the recovery is going to be or whatever, or whether they're on track or because Matazo is unfortunate, but he had another setback, so he was supposed to be like heading back sort of December, and we're going to sort of push him to the new year, and then get a setback that pushed him through into January, and now it's into February, I think. So those ACLs, they're tricky things.
And JB, I think, even more unfortunately than obviously just the fact that he's injured, I think he's actually, because he's so young, he's not even in our 25-man squad. So there's not even a silver lining, I suppose, to that where we could take him out of the squad and put someone in. It's like he's not. I suppose
probably the one is Drame, who was probably going to get sold, who then got injured, and so now he's staying. Because I think he was probably going to go to Stoke or someone was pretty heavily interested. Yeah. So he probably would have gone and had to play and got injured.
Interestingly, it sounds like that one's not as bad as it was first reported. I think it was originally 10 weeks, and now they're saying it's only going to be sort of 4 to 5 weeks. So I do wonder if come deadline day, there's any sort of attempt to sort of push his price up and still get someone to buy him if he's going to be, say, 2 weeks away once the transfer window ends, sort of thing. But that will certainly be an interesting one. So to John's question, do we think we're finishing the transfer? I can't believe that we live in a world where we could get to deadline day, potentially 2 points off the top 2, and Ajun is sitting there thinking, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to, ring up any of my I'm not going to pull any rabbits out of my hat. He surely has something spectacular planned for deadline day. Like there is no world where he does not try to do something crazy.
I reckon even if it's as much as just for like publicity, like I could see him legitimately just like coming out on deadline day and being like, "Oh, we've made an approach for some, huge star."
MLS is
like,
in the off-season.
Was it Eden Dzeko just is signed for Schalke like at 40 or whatever? It's like you could 100% see like, as you're doing sort of one of those, being like, oh well, we've made an approach for this guy who has got World Cup experience. He's done this and that, like everything else. And then they're just like, no, I don't want to go to Hull. And it's like, no, well, we put in an approach.
Yeah, that's right.
And then suddenly everyone's talking about Hull City and they're like, look, we're second though, like, or we're third. Like, look how close we are.
Yeah. So look, I was convinced it was going to be Zambrano. I thought that if we did nothing else, and I actually, to be fair, I was thinking if Lundstrom continued to be injured, he's now come back, which is really great. But if he had continued to be injured, it was all sort of adding up in my head that we would get to a point where we'd go, well, we needed a CDM. We've got this guy sitting at Maribor, who's played for us before. Deadline day loan move all seem to make sense. Lundstrom's now back fit, which is good. So maybe not Oscar, but yeah, I feel like there's got to be something. He loves a bit of drama. Like I'm sure he'll try to, like someone from the Premier League in on like a permanent. I don't know. He'll do something. We'll see.
Yeah, I guess it's the same thing of like where do they fit into the 25 minutes?
Yeah,
I think that's the biggest thing. If we can't shift any of those players and simplify the solution, even if he does. Like,
that's never stopped him before. Like he's the sort of owner who would buy a player and then make it work. Like think about how to make it work afterwards. Like he'll do it and then he'll be like, okay, we'll release someone, or like I don't know, Destan for example, we'll like loan him to Turkey, or we'll do something like that.
Yeah.
We'll see.
I don't know, maybe, probably. You're right. It's probably not done.
Because what is it? Is it a week left or something? It's like early February it finishes, I think.
Yeah,
like
I think so.
February 5th or something.
Something like that. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah, no, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Okay, but we'll talk Blackburn and Watford. So Blackburn, obviously having faced them already twice this season, probably arguably two worst performances of the season, you could say. With the 3-0 defeat at the MKM in the league, and then one of the worst football matches I've seen is the 0-0 in the cup. So I have no idea what this one has in store. I actually didn't realize they've only got one win in their last 10 in the league, so they're in horrendous form from that perspective. And I think we actually have a reasonable record at Ewood Park. So it's the sort of game where you just sort of go, typical City would be to drop points in this one and sort of strike. And I think Blackburn actually do have a reasonable record in terms of taking points off teams with, scraping draws with a couple of better sides. Like they actually just played Watford and got a 1-1 draw with them. But it's the sort of, like you look at that, you said it earlier yourself, like outside of the Ipswich and Coventry games, you sort of look at every other game and go, we're in the sort of form and in the sort of position in the table where you go, should just be a win at this stage.
Yeah,
I feel like we're back in the League One days. It's like, just knocking everyone off.
Yeah, maybe. I think like our away form is just so strong. I think they've got quite a few pretty significant injuries.
I did see Miller's just come back for them though. Your old mate.
Yeah. Oh, like I love him as much as he wanted to. I didn't get to see the cup game, but he wanted to fight Coyle a few times apparently. But that's him. He'd probably probably fit in, except that we got Giles, who's a little bit classier, but like his physicality and his die for the team energy, he'd actually probably fit in really well at City. I'd love to see him in a black and amber shirt.
If we had Miller and Millar, that'd be a very confusing one.
That'd be fine. He'd be overlapping Miller. It'd be very. I think he was there when we were at just a sidebar, but when at the Mariners when we had Matt Miller and Lewis Miller at the same time. So I think we've been there, done that. But they got a 1-1 with Watford, who were in really good form until we had that delayed fixture, and they've been not great since then. Apparently that really upset them because they lost all of their mojo when they had to go home 20 minutes before kickoff. So they've dropped off a little bit. I think they'll be. I think the danger with this sort of game, Blackburn, is that because they're not traveling that great, they're close to that relegation sort of scrap. That
I think
they're
going to
be
in the relegation zone now. Let me just double check that.
That they're going to have that sort of that. I guess we both did. They've got that sort of desperation to make sure they avoid that to stay in the division, but we are sort of chasing top 2 and trying to ensure that we stay in the top 6. So it's sort of an interesting. I guess it's going to be like who wants it more, really, at the end of the day, because I don't think it's not like sometimes, I think both teams are equally motivated just for different reasons. It's probably the best way to describe it. But I think, suddenly, because I was surprised in this once again that Crooks just wasn't, he was supposed to be injured, then played the 2 games, before that game, and then just didn't, play at all. So I was surprised by that, but I guess you got players coming back and suddenly it doesn't look as it's not as dire as it was, and now we can afford to actually give some of those players the extra bit of time that they need. So I think with the squad's looking reasonably healthy again, even with as you say, Balumi, Matazo, JB, Dry, Giles, Ajayi. Is Destin injured, or is he just?
Yeah, I think he's got a knee injury.
So, so he's still talking like there's eight or something players that are injured, and yet we're still going actually the squad's in a pretty good place. So
I mean, with all due respect to the players that are currently injured, outside of maybe Balumi, they're not, and Giles, they're not first 11 players who are now injured. So it's still a large injury list, but it's at least our best 11 is sort of on the park, so that makes it feel a little bit better.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, I think I don't really have any. I've got no fear. I mean, either of these games really. I think I would love nothing more than to for when Watford come back to town for us to just a win and just have them crying on their way home with their tails between their legs, whinging about how that game got called off 20 minutes before kickoff when they were ready to play and they were in such good form and they would have smashed us on that day, and we just sit there with the 3 points at full time.
Yeah, I mean, we typically, when previewing 2 games, sort of set that bar at 4 points to say, if we can take 4 points, that'd be a good return. But I honestly, like you, I look at these 2 games and think this should be 6 points because Blackburn 1 win in 10. All the pressures on them. Ishmael basically, pretty close to the sack potentially. Bottom 3, I just checked. So Portsmouth draw with Southampton, put them into the bottom 3. Really should be turning them over at Ewood Park. And then, Watford, I mean, it actually, funnily enough that it's Blackburn and Watford as the next 2 games. It reminds me if we had Blackburn during the 2020-2021 season where I think we had a game called off because of a bunch of positive COVID cases, maybe half an hour before kickoff. And Bradley Dack tweeted out saying, it's a shambles sort of thing. I had this big, massive rant about it. And then they came back for the replay and we smashed them. It sort of reminds me of that. So if we can knock Watford off, I think that'll be just about the sweetest result for the season.
Yeah, I guess the thing is can we do 5 in a row? That's a big. I mean, if we obviously we can, but that's a huge statement. If you get to this point in the season where you're really coming into the final sort of third, the final lot of games to be winning, 5 in a row. And then obviously at any point in the season, 5 in a row is an impressive run of form. But I think they were saying in the Swansea game, I heard the commentator was saying that since the win over Middlesbrough in December or whatever, we had collected the equal most points out of any team in the division in that period with only 1 loss and a draw or something in the 8 games or something. So we obviously are we're in a really strong patch of form anyway. So I guess it's just maintaining it. Can we do it?
I think
so.
the wildest part is, and even our very own Mike was sort of saying things along the same lines of, all of the commentary still is, who out of Middlesbrough and Ipswich will get that second automatic spot, and who's going to join Coventry in the automatic spots. And you look at it and you go, well, sorry, but we're actually level on points with Ipswich. We have a game in hand on Middlesbrough, which would put us 2 points behind them. If we are to win these two games, one of them being our game in hand, which is against Watford, we will be 2 points behind Middlesbrough at the very least. Middlesbrough have a couple of tricky games to come up as well. You sort of think, you were talking before about the pressures on Blackburn and us, and the pressure on us being to sort of keep a top 6 place. And I kind of think, yes, that strictly is true. But you look at it and you go, well, we're 7 points clear of Bristol City in 7th already. Really, if we were to win these two games, you'd almost think, dare I say it, that you'd almost lock us in for a top 6 spot, which is, famous last words, you don't want to jinx anything, and all of that is taken for granted. But to be in that sort of strong position with that sort of buffer for the top, I've been saying all season that for me, it's always about building that buffer on the teams below you and having that sort of almost margin of error. So you start to go, well, if we get to like sort of 10 points, 13 points inside the top 6, like you're starting to go, well, it's just fight for the top 2. And it's almost like Sunderland last season where you go, maybe we do get to a point where you go, okay, maybe the top 2 is out of the picture, but you go, okay, we just managed the squad through to the playoffs to set us up to do as well as we can, sort of thing. Like you kind of, it's only January, so there's still a lot of games to go, but you're kind of starting to approach that point of going, we are kind of locking ourselves into a playoff place.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's really not that far away, because like I know we've talked about, everyone a few weeks ago, everyone was saying, Coventry was unassailable and they had the 13-point lead or whatever it was. And said, well, like it's not unassailable, but like when you've got the time to sort of and you whittle it down, and they had that drop in form, and now they're 5 points ahead of Borough. So like
we're only 8 points behind Coventry. Same games played, but
yeah, every game we play, that the time frame for for other teams to claw back those differences gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So I think you're probably right. If we get to something like a 10-point or something lead, it's not guaranteed, but you feel, it's sort of one of those 99%. You're feeling very, very confident that playoffs is definitely happening at a minimum. And it would take pretty much a catastrophic downturn in form where we went, we'd have to go, 3 or 4 or 5 games in a row where we picked up no points or 1 or 2 points or something, while all of the teams, around us or a team below us then went on like a 5-game winning streak, basically. And it would, you're talking, like I'm no statistical genius, but, like the low odds, we'll put it that way, of those two things happening at the same time. Like, just...
And this infamous podcast that everyone's been rubbishing this week, the guy that was talking our chances up made the really good point from a statistics point of view that I hadn't actually picked up on, which is we haven't gone more than 2 games this season without a win. Like the longest winless streak that we've had is 2 games without a win, or maybe it's 3 games without a win, and then we've picked up a win. I think, for example, in our first 5 games of the season, we went draw, loss, win, draw, loss, win, sort of thing. And then from there, we've just sort of basically been winning almost every second game. And you think it's actually, we're up there by virtue of our consistency. It's not like we had a huge 9-game winning run and then we've dropped points in a whole bunch of games. Like we haven't been streaky like that. We've actually just been consistently churning out points. So yes, you're right. Like it could feasibly happen, and we can't say never. And there's still a lot of games to go, but with all the evidence in front of us, you kind of go, if we were to pick up the points in these next 2 games, you've got to be looking up the table, not down it.
Yeah, I think, look, it's bring on 2026, I say. It's a great start so far for us as Tigers fans, and, hopefully it continues and maybe we end 2026 in the Premier League.
Absolutely. Yeah, it'd be very exciting. But look, thank you for joining me for this one, Dan.
No worries.
And thanks everyone for listening in. Hopefully we are back this time next week talking about those 2 wins and potentially starting to look at the chasing down the top 2. But until then, come on, City.